Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in Venice, California. This is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael. And today we are excited to have back on the show Jacki Smith, who is the CEO and founder of Coventry Creations. And she is going to be talking about Samhain from a witch's point of view and other things about it. So we're very excited about that because it's one of our favorite festivals. Before we get started, Michael has a few announcements.
Hi, everybody, and thank you guys for tuning in. We really love all of you, and we get such great feedback, and it makes us really happy when you guys connect with us. So please leave us a comment and subscribe to our channel and participate on our chat, and we'll keep an eye on that. So if you have any questions for Jacki in the show, just let us know, and Krista will see them, as will I. I'm going to keep this brief because we have a lot of stuff that we want to get into today. So we've got some really great shows coming up in November. We're going to have Lon Milo Duquette back, and we're going to have Jim McGrath back. Next week is going to be a Spell It Out with Krista. So get all the information on our website, sixthsensesociety.com, SIXTH, all spelled out. If you're there, buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi. It really helps us cover some of our production cost, and it's really, thank you again to those of you who have done that, and we really appreciate that. So as I said, I'm going to keep this really, really short today. So I'm going to kick it back over to Krista and Jacki, and take it away, Krista.
Thanks, Michael. So before we get started, we wanted to thank one of our subscribers, Darian Evett. He sent us these beautiful wands that he makes. This one is for me. It's a 10-inch maple wand. It's very light and really smooth. I was playing around with it before the show, and I really feel it's very animated. And the other one he sent for Michael, it's a 13, I think it's 13 and a half inches maple too. It's for heavier spell working. What's special about Darian's work is he doesn't take the wood from the trees. He waits until it's fallen. So this was taken from a tree in January, which is, interesting enough, very special month for me for a variety of reasons. So we wanted to show it off a little bit and thank Darian, and I think they really feel very magical. I'm looking forward to consecrating mine, and I might even use it on one of my Spell It Out shows at some point. So thanks so much. We were really touched, and he sent us this beautiful letter with it as well, and it really just made our month. So we wanted to share that with the audience. So let's get started with Jacki. So welcome, Jacki.
Thank you, Krista. Thank you so much for having me back. This is so much fun and a lovely time of the year. Some of my favorite times.
Yeah, it's even in California where you don't really have the seasons, not the same way as the East Coast anyway. Still one of my favorites. So what would you like to start with it? Perhaps a little bit about the festival for people that might not know. Well,
Samhain is, I'm pulling out the information from the a little bit of the Wayback Machine for me, but Samhain is one of the 8 celebrations of the Wheel of the Year that comes from the Western European traditions, really celebrated in the Wiccan tradition and other traditions around that, different sects within that. It is a celebration of the dead, where the veil between the worlds is the thinnest. It's peeled back, and we can talk to our ancestors easier. Our psychic senses, our sixth sense is heightened, and we celebrate the final harvest. So anything that's still in the field after Samhain, it's spelled like Samhain, but it's pronounced Samhain. Anything left in the field after this time was left for the Fae. It was considered poison, rotten, and you leave it for the fair folk and for the elementals and things like that. So very magical. And over time it turned into Halloween. I was just watching, like, out of the corner of my eye last night, a fun documentary about how Halloween became so popular in the US. And it really was a night of tricking. The thing of what you would do is they would dress up, not necessarily for trick or treating, but just for tricking, to be a night of mischief. And if you never knew if it was a neighborhood kid or a spirit that was coming to trick you. So in the States, in the US, after, I think it was about the 30s, 40s, where they decided to turn it from tricking to trick or treating. And to maybe, if you stop egging my house, if I give you some chocolate. And then slowly it evolved, and it was just a fun documentary to watch. I can't remember. It's like, I have weird television. I don't have cable. So we have, like, I think it was on Pluto TV or something like that.
It's interesting how in the years, I would say the last decade, Halloween has become more popular, even more so than before. And in a way, we participate more with the Halloween spirit. We've always done, like, since we've been in California, we've always done a mix of sort of Samhain and Halloween on our own. But we've been doing a little bit more of the Halloween because we usually help our friends who have a haunted alley on Rialto, and we dress up as monsters.
Fun.
And that's really therapeutic. Scaring people is really therapeutic. And it's a really fun thing. So obviously we're not doing it this year because of the pandemic. But
right.
In a way, Halloween does have some of the spirit of Samhain in it. It seems.
I think it's really auspicious because you have Samhain, which is that's a reclaimed tradition that kind of, some of the essence of it remained because it's hard to kill a party. Sometimes you forget why we're partying, but we just do it at the same time. And then Halloween came from that, but also it's auspicious that it's the same time as Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, which is very similar. And it's not too far away from a couple of other celebrations, and I had them in my head and they just left, of different celebrations of light. So close to Yule too, with the waning of the year. It all kind of comes together. But I got it, truth be told, I really haven't done a big Samhain celebration since before my daughter was born. Because you become a parent, and I took her to some fun Samhain things, but there's some culturally important days here that I didn't want to stop her from enjoying, which the big thing was trick-or-treating and all the fun around Halloween in our culture. It's grown to be huge. It is the second most popular holiday after Christmas. Now there's a little bit of a gap, but that gap between Halloween and Christmas spending is closing. I find it really fascinating, especially with the growing witch aesthetic and witch culture. It's fun. One of the most fun things that happens is when I have a muggle who's trying to teach me about Samhain, which that's fascinating. Tell me more. I've never heard of that.
I realized yesterday I decided to just look up an article that was a little more scholarly. I was looking for the interpretation of the word because I'd forgotten, and there's some debate about it, but one is Summer's End. And it was this Celtic Studies Resources, digitalmedievalist.com. And it was pretty interesting. It's a very short article. It didn't have the author though. Just the name of the article is what is Samhain, and it mentions the other holidays which Zelima had mentioned. Madame Zelima is November 1st is All Saints Day, October 31st is All Hallows Eve, and November 2nd is All Souls Day. And in the article, it was saying that some think that All Souls Day is related to Samhain. But reading the article, I realized I'd gotten a little bit away from some of why I originally started participating with Samhain. Is it's the division between the light and the dark time of the year, and you begin the descent. It's what this is again based on studies of the Irish legends and mythologies that everyone agrees basically that it does divide the year sort of into the light and dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I first found that out, how it's natural as the light, as it gets darker, to want to go within, to be more quiet. And at that time, I'd been so overwhelmed by Christmas and things, I decided that I wanted to participate more in the descent energy and do less during that time of the year and not be spending 50 cards to people. And even though I like to do it, I realized that maybe it's a nice way to connect to nature. Like maybe I should get quieter or maybe don't do as much. And it's interesting because our culture makes us sometimes do more during this period of time, at least
Right.
with the holidays. And again, that's not wrong, but it is kind of nice to try not to do a lot. And this year we could do that, with the pandemic.
Which is interesting. And I want to talk about that. And I want to flip back a little bit to this dark time of the year is I was always taught that between Samhain and Yule is fallow, that you actually don't start any projects. You end things, you clean things out, you prepare, you shore up your resources. And also this is Scorpio time.
Mm-hmm.
So of secrets, of darkness, of death, and your things are getting colder. So you're, going on hay rides with your loved one and cuddling up a little, which is still kind of a Scorpio thing to do there. So it just kind of all falls into line of a natural time of review. If you think about it. So what'd you do this summer? This is when we're writing our papers in school. This is what I did on my summer vacation. And you're reviewing, like if we're going agriculturally thinking, which is how majority of the humans live their life, this is the time where you're making sure you have everything you need in your storehouse and you have enough smoked meat and canned and things that are ready to roll so you can make it through the winter. So that's why it has to be a fallow time, because you're making sure you got all your stuff, you're trading what you have access of. So it's really not a time to do anything. And they said the night's getting darker. And then this year with the pandemic, I mean, we can't ignore this conversation in magic and in spiritual tradition, because it's just preventing us from, it's really a stop of doing stuff that we used to do. And I had plans. I was going to be connecting with some people, several people from across the country were going to come together. That was the plan of January of 2020. That quickly went away. But it's okay. I mean, this is a time where this whole year is kind of like the fallow time where we need to reflect, understand where we are, where we're going, how we got here, not only personally, but as a culture, as a society. And
I think, and I know it's hard because people, like you said, have almost been in this time for the whole year, but perhaps there's a reason for that too, because I mean, the Western mind is not known to stop. I mean, that's one of our curses and gifts, is that, that we're always busy, we're always doing things. And again, that's not necessarily a negative thing, but just the idea that we just say, okay, maybe it's a being time. And sure, some of us still have to work and take care of things, but at the same time, you're still forced to kind of settle in more during this period.
Honestly, so I was just telling you and Michael that Coventry is moving to a larger facility, and it is not my ideal to move this time of year. Not just because it's colder, but it's not super cold yet. But for me, this is it's our busiest time of the year. So we're just focusing in on our resources and what we have going on. But I find it fascinating. This year has been a year of letting go. And it's not just letting go, that typical letting go of what used to be, and letting go of socializing and going out to eat and the bars, not that kind of letting go. It's a lot of letting go of old spiritual habits that no longer serve us, a lot of mental habits that no longer serve us. And I'm watching this, like every person I know is having to process, what does this mean for me? What's my takeaway? What is my gift going on here? And what am I letting go of? And that's really the question I have. It's like, so what are you letting go of? What's no longer serving you? And when I started doing that process of saying, okay, this doesn't fit us anymore. I'm making a choice to expand or shrink. That's really the choice this year. Am I going to let go of things that are holding me back and expand, or is this letting go of old dreams? So I'm going to shrink down a little bit and do this. It's like, I don't know. I haven't found anyone who isn't doing one or the other. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I feel I'm still doing that for sure about what I'm going to be doing and things that I used to really want to do. And I thought I was just being lazy. Maybe I just don't want to do it anymore,
Right?
So the one thing I wanted to ask you is there are quite a few people in the witchcraft movement and also pagan that see this as their new year. And we do, even though I don't know that it has any really validity in the scholarly side of it. But do you see this as your new year?
Again, going into the void. So we have this, I see Yule or as a new year for me, in the tradition. But again, truth be told, I haven't really followed the wheel of the year and that as once I let go of the need to follow this agrarian calendar that didn't really make sense to my city living life. So, but in that process, I find that the new year is at the solstice, the winter solstice, where, we have gone through a whole cycle and we have gotten as dark as we can. So you think about Samhain to Yule is like we're at the darkest time, and then Yule is when the light comes back, the days get longer again. So to me, that is the new year. So if you think about it, you got kind of 2.5 months to live it up between, maybe 2 months to live it up between Halloween and Yule. So it's like a whole 2 months of New Year.
It's true. I mean, most of these festivals and their origins were a lot longer. They're celebrated sometimes for a month, and they've gotten shorter and shorter. And I wonder if that's sometimes our problem in our society, is that we don't have long celebrations anymore, and that we're always, doing, even people that can take time off, they don't necessarily. And you wonder if maybe that's something we should go back to a little bit more, is just really taking more time to participate in whatever celebrations, we have.
Right. If you think about it, it's from Samhain to Yule, you're trading with people. Like if you go back, okay, so here's the storehouses. I have an apple orchard and I got more apples than I can eat for the rest of my life. So now I'm going to start trading with the guy who had the pigs and the guy who made all the cheese and the gal who has all the herbs. So this is when a lot of trading happened, when here's my harvest. Who's going to get what? What am I going to sell? What am I going to trade? And so that's like, if you think about these little celebrations between now and then, and I don't know, I have a birth month. So I'll celebrate all month long because I can't pack it into one day. And actually, that was a defense mechanism. Probably about 20 years ago. I just really was tired of having a crisis on my birthday. And I thought, this is too much pressure for just one day. And I decided first I was having a week. And then I said, well, I get the whole month. August is the best month of the year. Mm-hmm. And, or I might go whole Virgo season. I'm not sure. Depends on how I'm feeling. But, so why not? And Christmas, if you think about Christmas, I call it National Present Day. There's so much pressure on that one day to hold all the energy. It's impossible. Mm-hmm. It's impossible to meet all of your needs on that one day. And that's why I look at the whole holiday season. Mm. And it's not just the Christmas season. This starts my holiday season of being grateful, connecting with. So to me, that whole Samhain and Halloween and Day of the Dead, this is all ancestors for me. This is getting to a place of gratitude. And that's how I celebrate this stuff, is I get to gratitude. I get to my ancestors and I thank them for everything that they went through. And what's fascinating is 2 years ago, I did a radio show and we were talking about ancestors. And I talked about how I discovered that my grandparents on my mother's side met because of the Spanish flu.
Oh. But
so did my grandparents on my father's side. Both of my grandfathers, their first wives died in the time of Spanish flu. One of them specifically died of Spanish flu. and one of them died of complications. I think it was they didn't really say. There was just they just died. So I haven't found the death certificate, and there's nothing in the family lore. But it was right in the Spanish flu time. I find that really fascinating. So for me right now, I've been talking a lot with my ancestors, doing a lot of ancestor work, so much so that when we were coming back in May, when we were coming back to work, I beseeched my grandfather's first wives to protect me.
Wow.
And I said, you didn't survive this. So you went through that trial of fire. And then I called to my grandfathers and I said, you did survive this, and I need your help. I need you to watch out for me. So this is a time of giving thanks to them.
So do you have an ancestral shrine that's elaborated during this time, or do you have one all the time?
I have one all the time, and it has evolved over time as different people have passed away and they got on the altar, but also its location has evolved in different traditions. Some have like a gateway at your front door, kind of like a house, a spirit house. That's more in that Roman and Western European traditions have more of that house, spirit house. African traditional religions, they're more like outside by a tree, or in your kitchen or in your bathroom, like big pipes that go into the ground. Asian traditions, it's really high up in your main living area, and you put the shrine in your hell money up there. So I was thinking, well, an ancestor veneration or reverence or appreciation is in 90% of all cultures. It's really in the modern Western culture that we have decided that ancestors are not the jam. Old people are not the jam. So we're just going to only go for what's new. So I decided, since I was brought up in modern America in a melting pot of worlds, that my ancestors would appreciate a little bit of eclectic. And so I have a shelf in my office at home that I have a lot of pictures on and things like for the first ancestor that I knew was my Uncle Maury, who died when I was a lot younger, and he was a locksmith. And so I remember every family gathering, he had his kit and his tools and all of his parts, and he was always building locks. I think he was a little hyper. And so when I invited him onto my ancestor altar, I had a lock that broke and with a key in it, and I gave him the lock, and I said, always keep doors open for me.
Wow.
Close doors and open doors. And so I gave him a broken lock. And so it keeps him busy and it keeps him engaged. And when my Uncle Pete died, who he's a euchre player. He taught me how to play euchre. He's a good Irishman. And so, and you didn't keep score with the little fives. No, and he taught me how to table talk without table talk. And so I have a euchre hand. A euchre hand they can go alone with. So, and it really, in his like a funeral paper, it says "going alone."
Wow,
so,
I love that.
That's the kind of stuff that I do. So as I get older and more people who I knew and loved and influenced me have died, my ancestor altar went from something functional with some pictures of people that I have never met to something that's very emotional. And very connected, and I can feel their connection. And then when my mom passed and I put her on my ancestor altar, I told her not to come. I said, no, you need to be away for a while. And same thing with my dad. I put my dad on my ancestor altar and I said, Dad, you need to be away for a while. I don't want to talk to you for a bit, but I love you and I'm going to honor you. And so much healing happens there. I have a friend of mine who she is descendant from the SS in Nazi Germany. And she's like, I want nothing to do with my ancestors. And I said, well, in certain traditions, if you pray for your ancestors and work with them, you can elevate them and help heal them. And when you heal them, when you heal the wounds of your ancestors, those legacies, what happens is you become healed, because all that genetic memory becomes healed. To me,
that's important.
Important part. This is the important part for this time of year.
Thich Nhat Hanh says that in one of his books about, in Thailand that everyone would have an ancestral shrine and everyone is put on it, even the ones you don't get along with, and probably in his mind especially. And I remember thinking like, oh, I said, maybe I need to rethink this. And not that I was wishing harm to some of the relatives that, maybe just only one, I think of it, when I think of it, that died, that I would say just isn't on the altar. And I said, well, that makes sense. And also, isn't it really embracing your own shadow in a way? You're saying, why am I necessarily any better than, even if I didn't act on any of these memories or genetics? And it's just sort of saying, hey, I accept the darkness and I don't necessarily approve of their actions or want to be like them. But I remember thinking that was a very wise thing to include all family and all ancestors.
How better to stop a negative legacy, than to heal it and heal it within you. I do a lot of ancestor work with the Akashic record work, and we go into some of the origins of that. And the stories that come forward are really fascinating and powerful to me. So I don't always bring the stories through. A lot of times it's my client that does, and I'll say, well, I sense something going through your father's side, blah, blah, blah. And they'll say, oh, well, let me tell you what happened. And so we go back to that origin and we find that seed of that negative legacy, and we heal it there and bring it forward. So we cascade all that healing forward. So we start to remove it from that genetic memory, and it's very freeing. So this is one of the most powerful times of the year to do that. And so back in the day when I was a baby pagan and a baby witch, going to the big public Samhain events was very, very important. And I've hosted some too, and I've done ritual around this. And then over the years, with being a mom and the focus on what does my kid need now, and building costumes for trick-or-treating, which is always fun. And then she was in marching band, so they were always competing this time of year. So I let a lot of that go, but I've retained that important ancestor work. And now that came, like, I was pretending and learning about what the ritual could be early on when I was doing the bigger public rituals. And now it's evolved into, what is my personal evolution this time of year? What am I healing and letting go of? And what are my resources? That's the other thing that's so important, is I really spend a lot of time in gratitude. I think my ancestors, because we stand on their shoulders, everything that they've done and all of their hard work, we are the culmination of. And then I find the gratitude in my life. This is a great time for gratitude.
I like that. I've never really heard people talk about that specifically associated with this time of year. And it does make a lot of sense to be grateful. And it's one of the things that, America has, as you said earlier, we kind of throw out the old and our own history. We get rid of old buildings that are really treasures. And it's maybe because we're still a young country. That's all I can figure out, is that we have a lot of growing pains. We're not that old as a United States country. But I really like that idea of gratitude. I hadn't thought. I'm gonna think about how that can work for me. And this year, I feel I'm getting back to my roots, because I have to. And I really appreciate doing this show, because just even thinking about it a little bit, I had meant to get more back into just doing a simple ritual connecting to ancestry. And for me, the Morgan is an important goddess for me, and especially this time of year. It is in the Irish mythology. There's some interesting things about this being a time for justice, and I guess there's some history in how people would have disputes settled often for 7 years. And then the Morgan and the Dagda actually consummating their relationship at this time, which seems, when you think about it, it seems like, well, that should be Beltane, and it's not. So it kind of is an interesting, I guess, twist to it, depending on which deities you follow. But Michael and I really like the Morgan. And so I felt like I'd been getting away from that a little more. But I like the idea, the notion of, oh, this is a time for justice. And I found this great quote in the same article that I was reading. They said that the warriors would be boasting, sometimes fraudulently, about their success in battle, and they would bring the tongues of the slain, which is really horrific in some ways, as trophies. But their own swords would speak against them if they were not telling the truth. And I love this idea of their swords. It's like the exact quote is, speaking with the tongues of demons when the tongues of the slain could not give the false boasters the lie. And I thought, wow, I love the magic of that, you know. So it brings out, one of the reasons I love magic and witchcraft are these stories and legends, and you want them to be real on some level. I want the sword to talk, you know?
Yeah. And what did that mean? What did it mean when your sword talked? There has to be some physical, like tangible thing that, and so, well, my sword is, could you smack it on something and made a woo? And if it didn't make the right sound, your own guilty conscience is smacking it wrong, or I don't know. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, I've often wondered, because of the idea that there are people that have seen reality that is really psychedelic, you know, and without drugs. And you wonder if there's any truth in some of the stories, like how much is a metaphor, and how much did magic really happen? I mean, why could it not happen? It's our own limited perceptions that maybe don't see this kind of magic as much anymore.
And I love that concept, because I have moments every day, maybe not every day, but frequently throughout my life and throughout my day-to-day living, where there's a thing that happens this way all the time, and then suddenly it's different. It reacts different as a portent, you know, like a warning, or a, hey, look over here. You know what does it to me all the time now that I think about it is my phone. Has your phone ever dialed anyone all in its
Oh,
own?
yeah. And it was significant when it did.
Every time. And then, and now we have, you know, we're being, you know, our phones spy on us a bit. I don't prescribe to these conspiracy theories. This is just technology. It's just the price of marketing.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But every now and again, my phone will say, oh, did you want blah, 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 blah? And I'm like, I wasn't saying anything. And it happened a lot after a friend of mine passed. When he passed, my phone would come up with dirty things. It would say, we don't know where to find that blow up doll. And I'm like, Nate. And it would do it in the middle of a business meeting. And I'm like, oh, you're a jerk. You need to cut that out. And just having a random conversation. And then, just my phone does stuff like that. And so I look at that as kind of like a, you know, if your phone responds to, if Siri responds to you wrong, if your Amazon Echo picks up and sends you a 24-pack of toilet paper randomly, you know something's up. But just different weird things happen.
Yeah, it's true that I think that spirits can speak through the electrical world. In general, I think most people would say that is one of the ways people can communicate. Something you said earlier I wanted to talk about too, the idea that this can be connected to the Fae and the She, and that is true also in the tales, that this is not only about ancestors, but really other worlds, that you can more easily access the other worlds right now.
Mm-hmm. I love this time of year for talking to the spirits. And it's the spiritual world, the world outside of our three-dimensional understanding. And you talk to the Fae more, you talk to elementals, guardians, guides, etc. It's just they're in for me, they're in my head. I just turn around like, who said that? I hear my name being called a lot more this time of year. But at Coventry, we actually work with elementals and with, it's really more the elementals and say the Fae or the fairies, because they're a little bit higher. But because we're doing magic here all the time and we're bringing in energy, and I've set up really thought forms around these energies repeating over and over, we attract them. And when they're and I learned a while ago, when they're out of control, things break.
You know, going back to something you said, I've always wondered, what does it mean when you hear your name spoken, like out of the blue? I had that happen to me last week, and it was a male voice, and I haven't had that for a long time. And I just heard Krista, and I was like, what? And I was in that, I was just waking up. I was in that, but it was very distinct. And I was like, what do I do with that?
Well, you can look at it psychologically, is that something is being triggered. If you just look at that psychologically, there's something that's going on in your world, like especially when you're waking up from sleep, that it's a voice from your past and your name was called, it just reminds you of a thing. And it says, oh, what's going on? And then dig into that trigger. And if you look at it in the spiritual world, when you hear your name, somebody wants your attention. So that's when I usually feed my ancestors, or spend some more time in meditation, throw some cards.
Wow.
Dig into that mediumship a little bit and say, who's talking to me?
So yeah,
I usually
check it out.
I think that's part of our blind spot too. It's like there's something in your blind spot. So I usually reach out to a trusted medium or a trusted guide, coach.
That's a good advice too.
I don't know everything, and I am so good at tricking myself. I'm amazing at coming up with some kind of story.
I don't think you're alone with that one. We have a comment from Adriana. She says, "Keep it up, guys. Interesting material." So thank you for your comment. So that's nice. But no, thank you. That's helpful. I've honestly, I don't know why I've never thought to really follow up on it. I guess we have blind spots too of what we follow up on in our lives spiritually. Some things like if I see something as a sign outside, I will follow up on that, an outer synchronicity or, a name that's repeated over and over. But that I've never really thought to dig into. That's a great advice.
Thanks. I'm glad you like that one.
Yeah.
I came up with it just then. I'm just kidding.
So do you have, since you obviously are a master candle maker, do you have candles that are specifically good for this time of year, or do you feel it's more personal for people?
Well, I could lean this way and you could see all the witches brew candles, which I like to promote this time of year. And then I have all of my witches union patches and stuff. So I'm a witch 365 days a year. I used to have a big orange streak in my hair, and people would ask me if that was my Halloween costume. And I said, well, if Halloween's every day, then yes. So I used to have different candles that I would make for this time of year. And right now with the pandemic and how behind we are in manufacturing, because we had to be closed for 2.5 months, we decided not to do the limited editions. That the everyday editions were in enough demand. But it's very personal, and I love pulling cards for people this time of year from our oracle or from tarot to say, well, what is it you really need? This is a great time. The other thing I gotta talk about is the Mighty Dead. This is an amazing time, and picking different candles to work with them is great. But the Witches Brew candle, I love doing this, is honoring the witches and the spiritual workers that have gone before us, that paved the way for us to spend that little bit of time on the Mighty Dead. Christopher Penzick talks about the Mighty Dead. He was the first one I really learned that concept from, and that's powerful, because you can start to build that relationship this time of year, because the veil is so thin, and you can start to build that, start to get into that, get them into your sphere of influence or into their sphere of influence, and honor them.
Don't you think it's also a good time to recognize, and especially like in witchcraft, if you have not, people that have made your life a lot easier? Like I did an interview once of Z Budapest because of what she did for fortune telling. I don't think a lot of people know that she went to real battle so we can all do cards, and it's not against the law. And it's a great story. And it was, years ago. And there are people that really put themselves out that are still alive to help it make it safer for people to come out as witches, and I think I think maybe some of the younger witches may not know that. There's some of them I know do. There's some that the ones that are really into reading and they're really into history. There's obviously But I think maybe honoring people that are still alive that have really went through a lot more hassle, and people made fun of them, and it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool really when I was growing up. I learned from my mother before she died that there was a witch, though, somewhere on one of our streets. And she said that we used to go there trick-or-treating. And obviously she must have been a good person. My mom let us go in. I said, wow, I met a witch and I didn't know it, you know? And how cool is that my mother knew? And she later told me, so, you know, there was a witch on our street there. And I think it might have been in Michigan, actually.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Starts with a G. I can't remember her name. It's just, again, left my brain. But I love that. I just put some things together just now. If you think about this, that is an important time to do this, because think about how if you take away the atrocities that back up Thanksgiving, that happened to create Thanksgiving, and you just stick with that place of gratitude and the gathering of family that it became. Think about that. We're honoring it. So Thanksgiving is more important for families to get together than Christmas in America. And so if you think about that whole transition of, here we are honoring the dead, but maybe we kind of start to transition to honoring the ancestors, our elders. Sorry, ancestors are dead, elders are living. Our elders that have paved the way for us. And I really love how you brought that up. I've been having this conversation a lot, not about Z Budapest, but about, I started on my path 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, which is like scary to say, but there was nothing. There was a couple of Scott Cunningham books, a Paul Barrow book, a Sybil Leek book, just a handful of things. And Llewellyn was just getting going. So we were hungry for, Spiral Dance was like the Bible. And so we were hungry for information that was not reconstructed. Legit living tradition. We were hungry for this. And so when some of these living traditions were handed to us through different traditions, one of them being smudging, it was just so honored. And everyone that I practice with and everyone that I talked to that was practicing back then, when the first time you learned how to smudge, it was a sacred tradition being passed on to you. So there's a lot of people who paved that way, that normalized different things. I talked about before is my big, hairy, audacious goal in life was to normalize the word witch and magic. And I've been saying that for over 10 years now. And I was doing an interview and with a young girl, she's about 22, doing her podcast. And we did an interview and I said, I wanted to do that. She goes, well, isn't it normal now? And I'm like, oh, I need a new goal. Because it's true, because we've normalized things like smudging your house and using the word smudge as a verb, as a part of our everyday language is miraculous. These things is because if I said to anyone that I'm going to go smudge my house, it was like, you know, the big roll your eyes, we're going to commit you, and don't go to Jacki's house because blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
But now it's like, I have at my store, we have people coming in, like soccer moms are coming in going, I gotta get a little smudge. I'm having people over and I want to clear their energy when they're done. And I was like, what do you know about this? And that's all they know.
Right.
But if that's all they know, and then the next person comes up and says, well, you know, hey, I really don't like the energy that's going on in this place. Let's change this culture. Let's make this shift. It's not a big leap.
Right.
It's like, oh, well, you know, I want to change the energy around the word blah, blah, blah. You know, I want to change the energy around how women are treated or how immigrants are treated. It's not a huge leap. So that's why it's important that we allow it to be normalized, so that when we say, did you know that smudging is a Native American tradition? And they shared it with us in good faith, and that da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So then the next time Native American issues come up, you're like, I don't understand why this is an issue. Why are we trying to take things away from these people?
It's a little more complicated than that, because there are traditions like Buddhism. One of the ways Buddhism has survived, I read this in one of the history books, is they like to blend in with the traditions, and they want you to blend the traditions, and they also accept anybody, like that there's a little bit of the pure blood in certain indigenous groups, that pure blood, like you can't do this because you don't have this background. And I am personally not a fan of that. It reminds me of Bruce Lee when he came and he taught white people the martial arts, and he broke the rules. So there's room for that. There's people that like my friends that studied 10 years with Lakota. They're white people, but they studied 10 years. They did everything they were taught. They still didn't feel accepted. And I thought, well, why did you train them then? Like, why did you invite them in? And then after 10 years of doing what they asked them to do, they always very reverent, these two people. And they weren't upset about it. They said, well, we just never really felt completely included. And I said, maybe we need to rethink a little bit of the intentions of the people using it and realize that the blending goes to a lot of religions. It's part of how they survive. I think it's how it's done. I think it's the respect. I think knowing where things come from is important. But I think there can be too much divisiveness over some of the things where you could be having an ally that really respects what you do, just didn't know. And how can I possibly know everything? I've tried now to learn things. There's so much to learn as terms of background. How do you have the time to do all of it,
Yeah, the older I get, the less I know.
Yes.
The more I realize there's more information out there that could affect me. And I feel stupider and stupider. But you're right. This cultural blending is really complicated. It is really complicated, and there is no one answer. And I have opened my mind to thinking about how this affects the people around me, and the people who this is their heritage. Absolutely, I 100% bring that into the forefront of my brain, where that was not part of the thought process before. So I really appreciate that piece. And people ask me for lots of different products. I've been asked for Hanukkah candles, and I've been asked for power animal candles, and I've been asked for Orisha candles. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not making those. I'm not Jewish, and I'm not just a factory churning out the next color candle.
Right.
I'm not going to do power animal candles because I haven't been formally trained in that. Although my sister has, but we're like, yeah, this is not our jam here. I don't do Orisha candles because it has a real specific tradition and a real specific way things are done there. And so even though I have been initiated in African traditional religions, so a level of initiation. So I actually, it's within my wheelhouse, but it's like, but that space belongs to somebody else. I'm going to do the space that's mine and that I feel really empowered by, and then share that information. So, this cultural blending, and this is a great time to talk about cultural blending too, because if you think about it, Samhain and Day of the Dead and All Souls Day, and there's so many other, there's two more, I can't remember them. I looked them up yesterday and I was like, oh, right there, tip of my tongue. But this is witchcraft. American witchcraft is an amalgamation. It's all alchemy. It's a blend of folk magic that came from Europe, folk magic that came through the atrocities of slave trade, spiritualist movement, Native American, First Nations people. It all is an amalgamation of different things. You can pick apart some of our American tradition and say, oh, that smudging came from moving the word from fumigating to smudging. That came from the Native tradition. the witch's jar, which has origins in Western European folk magic. But then if you look at how it's different in America, that's very, very hoodoo.
Mm-hmm.
So, essence of bend over, those type of command and control spells, that absolutely comes through hoodoo. So we are a melting pot of magic. I talk to people in other parts of the world and they're like, I don't know what you Americans do, but we don't do that. But they're fascinated. They're so hungry for more information from different living traditions. So again, the mighty dead, these are the people who have paved the way for us. The folks at Scott Cunningham, who laid down this foundation and made, and yeah, people critique Scott Cunningham for being everything, but yet at the same time, thank goodness he did. He made it so approachable.
Sure. Michael, you have a comment.
Yeah, I wanted to share something with people, and kind of what we were talking about too. I think that there are traditions, but it's great to be a little creative sometimes too, and to create some of your own ritual. And I kind of wanted to share with everybody a ritual that we created for Samhain years ago that we used to practice and haven't the last couple of years because we've been at the haunted house. But at the same time, it's a wonderful little ritual, very simple. And I think sometimes the simple rituals can be the most powerful because you don't have to sit there and try and memorize form and concentrate on it. You can be present. But what we did is we took a cauldron and we sort of formed a circle with our friends around it, and everybody had a candle. We lit a candle, hopefully a Coventry candle in the cauldron. And the first person leading the ritual would light his candle from the one in the cauldron, and we would speak of the people that had passed over that we wanted to remember, our friends and ancestors, my father and mother, and our best friend Andrew, and so forth. And then when we'd finish that act of remembrance, the next person in the circle would light their candle from mine, and it would go all the way around the circle with each person speaking their remembrance until we got back to the beginning again. And then once it had gone all the way around, the next step was that we would reflect on the year and establish our New Year's resolution and then blow out the candle. And again, that would go all the way around the circle. So, and we had people calling us on the phone from Australia that wanted to be a part of it. And our friends would show up from everywhere. It was amazing. Now, I think you could do a social distance version where instead of getting close together, you could each, walk into the cauldron and light your candle from the cauldron rather than getting close to each other. So there may be a way to do that with still acceptable social distancing. But it was incredibly moving, incredibly powerful, an incredibly healing time. And we just really got a lot out of it. So again, I just wanted to share that with our viewers so that it's a really simple little Halloween ritual or Samhain ritual. And it does bring a lot to the new year.
I am in love with that. I love really simple ritual. And I love when a public ritual becomes a collection of many personal rituals. I think that's super powerful. So that's beautiful. Thank you.
And we would have people that would come to we'd have like a little Halloween party first, and then we would do the ancestral, and some of them we didn't know that well, and they would participate. They totally got into it and look forward to it. And I was very touched, and I thought, wow, there's really a need for things like this. It's like more people could do this and be excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I wanted to mention before we're getting a little bit closer to the end is that there's a blue moon this year on October 31st. So isn't that kind of special?
Yeah. Now, is it a legit blue moon or is it, so blue moon is technically like 3 moons within a certain time frame or something. I don't know.
I thought it was 2 moons, but anyway, there's 2 moons. There was one on the 1st and there's one on the 31st. I think it does depend on where you live, but I did check my calendar and it was saying it was the 31st. I think it could be, so that my understanding was blue moon, but I could be wrong. But I know there's 2.
No, I think it's a blue moon. I think I was like giving a nod to the super uber technical people, but yes. If there's 2 full moons in a month, I'm for it. And I am like out of words. So this weekend coming up is right before the election. It's Halloween. It's a blue moon. It's just so much. There's one other thing going on, and I'm just like full of energy, full of thought, full of I'm really deep in this whole energetic process that we're in. And so this weekend for me is going to be a blend between fun and deep. And
I think that I may be wrong about this, but I think Mars goes direct on the 3rd of November. It's been in, retrograde, though you still are going to feel the
Mercury
after.
retrograde ends on election day.
And
So
I
it's
know
Mercury
Mars is
retrograde.
around that time too, Mars
Yeah.
and so
It's just
there's a
so
lot
when
kind of shifting.
Yeah, that shift, and when it
Yeah.
starts to go direct, Mars and Mercury starts to go direct, we feel the energy of that. We're in that
Yes.
that shadow. I'm kind of gonna swing the pendulum a little bit. It's a big deal. There's a lot of energy, and so if you like flow with the energy, like get into the flow of it, and you'll have an easier time. Like when you get into the flow of Mercury retrograde, just start paying attention. What's going to go wrong? What's going to go right? And flow with it. Same with this. I'm not doing like manifesting ritual around this, and I'm just doing it really personally and private, not just because of social distancing, but because I really feel the need for myself to let go of certain things. And actually, I'm going to do some work on letting go of my past thought patterns. This move into this building for Coventry is a really, really big deal. It's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's a change in thought process, and it's a change in how we do things. We're going from, having to all be close in the same little room, which we can't anymore because we need social distancing, to being in a bigger building where I'm getting in 10,000 steps a day because
Wow.
my printer's on the other side of the factory and shipping is over there. And so, yeah, and I don't mind. But it's going from thinking like a scrapper and thinking like we're going to make it, kids, to thinking really big, like, okay, what big thing are we building?
Mm-hmm.
It's just going into thinking big and thinking in abundance. So that's my letting go. That's literally what my ritual is going to be about, letting go of the fear of success. Oh, that's, failure doesn't scare me. Success scares me because I got to do it a second time.
Well, that's a good point. It's that repeating of it. So let's say you have one success, and it could be initially a person can feel, oh, I'm surprised by that. But then if people want you to do it again and again and again, that you're right. It's that fear of not being able to repeat it. I think that's a valid fear for people.
So that's so going back to like, this is a really big time. So there's a lot of things that are moving from retrograde going direct. There's the blue moon. So it's like, it's really auspicious. So think about what you want to let go of. It's not a manifesting time. Don't manifest anything. What you want to do is you want to get rid of the stuff that's in your way, that's holding you back. And it's usually here and here. It's in your head and it's in your heart and it's in your spirit. And it's old mental and spiritual and emotional habits. And I know I'm not the only one who's been struggling with that lately. Old habits about all this stuff. So,
well, the interesting thing, what I'm going to probably talk about in my next Spell It Out, and I've been talking about it, is the Pluto return in the United States chart, which doesn't really hit directly until 2023, I think, or 2022. But it's in the second house, at least the chart I use. There are different charts for the US, but this is one of the popular ones. And the second house has to do with our values as well as money and finances. And really, I think it's not a bad time for all of us to look deeply at what values no longer serve us and what we really want our lives to sort of, I guess, be magnetized by. What is the purposes? What are the things we value? Do I value more time? Do I value having more security? Do I value love that I don't have? Do I value creativity? And I think it sort of matches what's going on in the United States. What you said.
That is, yeah, I'm really feeling that. So this is a great time to start prepping for that. Thank you so much for bringing that full circle for me.
Well, thank you for bringing it up. And people can contact you on Instagram at Coventry Candles. Is that correct?
Yep.
And your website is still coventrycreations.com?
That's us.
That's it. And thank you so much for coming on and really
thank you, Krista,
talking about this amazing topic. And I really hope you have a blessed Samhain.
You too. And may all your communications be easy and the messages from Spirit be clear.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that. Thank you so much. I need that.
Yeah.
Take care
Take
too.
care.
And thank you folks for listening in. I look forward to next week when we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure together. Have a wonderful holiday period.